William Shatner dedicated decades to portraying a captain who represented power, cohesion, and discovery. To millions, he was the embodiment of optimism in a chaotic universe, the one who mapped the ways to the unknown. However, when the cameras were not rolling, reality was quite different. At 93, Shatner no longer shies away from the truth about what occurred on that set. His words now strip away the picture of the bold leader to expose the price, the turmoil, and the regrets that trailed behind him years after Star Trek ended. William Shatner's life started not in Hollywood, but in Montreal, Canada, on March 22, 1931. He arrived dramatically, born at home amidst a paralyzing blizzard that shut the roads. That sense of surviving through extreme circumstances marked the very first chapter of his life. From childhood, he was drawn to performance. At 8, he entered a children's acting program run by a respected Canadian actress, and by 10, he was working on radio productions. His debut role in The Magic Flute on CBC gave him a voice on national airwaves before he had even entered his teenage years. Soon he won acclamation for his stage turn as Tom Sawyer that would be envied by any adult actor. Critics and audiences observed a natural air, a stage confidence that was well beyond his years. But his course was never easy. In 1948, Shatner enrolled at McGill University to pursue economics, attempting to abide the practical desires of his parents. Years later, he admitted that he cared little about the classes, missing lectures and dedicating his time to student drama. In 1950, he had authored and acted in a campus drama that gained such popularity, CBC producers took notice. That experience was the start of his foray into television. In 1956, seeking a larger stage, Shatner took a gamble, moving to New York City. With no training and little cash, he made his way onto Broadway in Tamburlaine the Great. The show closed after only 20 performances, but the value was not in its production, it was in demonstrating that a young Canadian actor could stand on his own in one of the world's most competitive arenas. The years that followed were spent doing bit roles and guest spots on American television. He made guest appearances on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, The Defenders, and The Outer Limits. But it was The Twilight Zone that introduced something more profound. In Nick of Time, he portrayed a man gripped by superstition, and in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, he acted raw panic unspooling mid-flight. Those performances introduced a talent for intensity that would come to characterize his most recognizable role, the weight of Captain Kirk. By the mid-1960s, William Shatner had already appeared on television, but nothing foreshadowed that he was about to set foot into a character that would mold the rest of his life. NBC commissioned a second pilot for a science fiction show in 1965 after NBC rejected the first one, The Cage, which featured Jeffrey Hunter as Captain Christopher Pike. When Hunter declined to come back, Gene Roddenberry came to Shatner. Shatner observed the rejected pilot and right away knew what was wrong. He felt that the captain could not be stiff or too formal, but should be likable, someone to whom the audience could entrust themselves as both a commander and a friend. In 1966, Star Trek debuted and Shatner brought James T. Kirk to life. He crafted the captain with a blend of Horatio Hornblower's courage and Alexander the Great's charm. But he brought one thing the first pilot didn't: humor. This combination of firmness and friendliness made Kirk memorable. He could spit out an order in one sentence and issue a sarcastic grin in the next. For a country immersed in Cold War fears, Kirk's hopefulness and firmness seemed like a guarantee that humanity would be able to weather the unknown. But from the first day he assumed command of the Enterprise, Shatner bore a secret weight. Being the captain wasn't merely commanding an imaginary crew. It was also establishing authority within a cast of eager actors. Leonard Nimoy's Spock, with his unflappable brains and enigmatic attitude, soon proved a favorite with audiences, something Shatner couldn't disregard. Dramas increased as he struggled to maintain Kirk front and center. Writers and directors found themselves between the two men, balancing egos while keeping production on track. The stress was relentless. Shatner confessed later that his determination to preserve the star prominence of his character stemmed from underlying insecurity. Behind Captain Kirk's cocky confidence was an actor who feared being upstaged. Every line, every scene felt a battle for survival. By the end of the first season, the Enterprise had already become the stage where professional jealousy simmered, threatening to spill over. And though the audiences at home saw a crew united in exploration, on set, fractures were starting to show. While the Enterprise was based on the fiction of togetherness, off-camera it more resembled open conflict. William Shatner's ego daily came into conflict with Leonard Nimoy's increasing fame as the actor who played Spock and won the hearts of the public in a way that no one had anticipated. What appeared as cooperation on screen more often than not disintegrated into competition after the cameras stopped rolling. One of the first and most notorious flashpoints was in September 1966, during the production of The Man Trap. Feeling Nimoy was garnering too much attention, Shatner intentionally crept into his co-star's camera shots 17 times one day. The interference necessitated multiple retakes and angered the crew. Nimoy threatened to leave set unless it ended. It was a jarring moment that exposed just how tenuous the alleged camaraderie had grown. There were still clashes. In March of 1968, while filming The Paradise Syndrome, Shatner and Nimoy had a shouting argument over whether Kirk's amnesia was to be played emotionally raw or discreetly restrained. Shatner insisted on raw emotion. Nimoy urged restraint. Hours of filming were lost before Gene Roddenberry himself stepped in. Writers became equally irritated. Episodes such as The Trouble with Tribbles became battlegrounds as Shatner and Nimoy reworked dialogue, even eliminating lines spoken by other actors. By the third season, cast members were resentful enough to refer to the series as the Shatner-Nimoy Show. Even milestone moments involved secret strife. In Plato's Stepchildren, Shatner and Nichelle Nichols shot what became famous as the first interracial kiss on American television. But Shatner was also concerned at first about the audience response and asked for alternate shots without the kiss. Nichols, adamant in its necessity, ensured every safe shot failed, and together they forced the network to have no other option but to broadcast the kiss, a moment of forwardness born of tension, not harmony. And there was also fatigue. Episodes routinely required 16 to 20 hours of shooting, and tempers wore thin under the constant schedule. In the Tholian Web in October 1968, following 18 consecutive hours on set, Shatner collapsed, hurled his script, and refused to go on until he was rested. Even the Enterprise captain, apparently, was not immune to the drudge. Behind the sheen of the episodes, Star Trek was a tempest of clashing personalities, ruined takes, and breakdowns. What the audience hailed as a beacon of hope was, in fact, a fragile construct barely sustained by sheer determination. While William Shatner exuded command and control as Captain Kirk, his own life outside of the show was disintegrating under the pressures. The punishing production schedule, dawn-to-dusk days, and late-night finishes gave him little time for family. Between 1966 and 1969, he confessed later that he had missed 217 family dinners. Christmas 1967, rather than spending it with his kids, he spent it on set reshooting The Gamesters of Triskelion. On April 12, 1968, while his daughter Elizabeth was acting in a school play, he sat stuck in another rewriting session with Leonard Nimoy. His first marriage to Canadian actress Gloria Rand, which had begun with promise in 1956, could not survive the neglect. Together, they had 3 daughters, Leslie, Elizabeth, and Melanie, but Gloria found herself raising them largely alone. Each missed birthday and holiday deep in the wound. By June 1969, only weeks after Star Trek was canceled, she filed for divorce. The timing was merciless. As Shatner's career appeared to disappear, so did his family life. The years following Star Trek were the lowest of his life. Praise as a rising star and anointed as a performer equal to Marlon Brando vanished. Casting agents now saw him only as Captain Kirk. Work dried up, and the typecasting of the industry ostracized him. In the early 1970s, he managed to get by on low-budget films such as Big Bad Mama and The Devil's Rain. Those films paid bills, but boasted little in terms of dignity. Financial collapse was not far behind. With Gloria and the children living in Beverly Hills, he could no longer support a home of his own. He lived out of a camper in the San Fernando Valley, parking wherever he could, and did his best to hide how far he had fallen. He took up all kinds of invitations for small parties or wrapped his own old possessions as Christmas gifts for his daughters. The man once hailed as cultural icon now fought to get through the day. Shatner would come to call those years, that period, unable to describe the humiliation. The courageous captain of the Enterprise was in fact a man bereft of certainty, lost without a ship, and severed from the family he had struggled to support. Salvation for William Shatner came from the very franchise that had shattered him. In 1977, worldwide success with Star Wars persuaded Paramount Pictures to revive Star Trek. What started as proposals for a new TV series turned into something bigger, a feature movie with a huge budget. By 1979, Star Trek, the motion picture hit theaters, returning Shatner to playing Captain Kirk. Shatner did not attend the funeral, and the public severely criticized him. He later confessed that the break and not attending Nimoy's send-off were one of the largest regrets of his life. Tragedy had also befallen his marriages. His third wife, Nareen Kidd, drowned in 1999 after battle with alcoholism. Shatner himself found her dead body in their swimming pool, an experience that left him traumatized and haunted. Although the cause of death was officially listed as accidental, there were rumors, and he was hurt all the more. To pay tribute to her memory, he formed a foundation that assists women with addiction, translating bereavement into action. Even at his 90s, Shatner never agreed to exit quietly. In 2021, he went to space on Blue Origin, becoming the oldest human being to depart Earth. He later admitted that the encounter was not celebratory, but despondently sorrowful. Peering down at the vulnerable planet, he was aware of the burden of mortality and the inevitability of terminations. His thoughts became philosophical. In interviews, he ruled out statues or buildings as legacies, asserting that they deteriorate and disappear. Legacy was in the minute-positive acts that radiate indefinitely unnoticed, he felt. Miraculously, he continued to work. He issued the album So Fragile, So Blue in 2022, toured with orchestras, and debuted a documentary film about his life called You Can Call Me Bill. But among the works, he confessed to a shocking revelation. He had never seen Star Trek from beginning to end, not the sequels, not even bits of his own show. At 93, he said he could not stomach viewing himself on television. For the hero who defined a man of heroism, the most difficult one to watch was his own reflection. William Shatner's life is evidence that legends bear scars too. The man who commanded the Enterprise through galaxies was the one behind the cameras fighting rivalries, heartbreak, and the isolation of a life driven by ambition. At 93, his truthfulness strips away the myth of Captain Kirk and leaves us with the reality of an imperfect but indomitable man. Do you believe Shatner was unfairly criticized by his castmates, or did his ambition for the spotlight make him the villain of his own tale? Leave your comments in the section below, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video for more untold stories of Hollywood's most iconic stars.